Just look at it all.
Earlier this year, gaming news sites were reporting that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy XVI were not meeting expected targets for Square Enix. And this is kind of shocking if you think about it, because last year in 2023 at the Game Awards, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth actually won Most Anticipated Game of the Year. And even upon its initial release, some game reviewers actually bounced off of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for a variety of different reasons, despite the fact that many of them actually really liked Final Fantasy VII Remake and the original Final Fantasy VII. However, despite all of the negative press that I was kind of seeing surrounding this game, and maybe this was just a me problem because I was only seeing some of the more negative stuff, personally, I really liked Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And without further ado, my name is Marks, and this is going to be my love letter to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Okay, so first I think we need to start with the good of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And ultimately what really clicked with me was a little bit of a frame shift from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Listen, I really liked Final Fantasy VII Remake, but you can't take away from the fact that it was mostly a linear on-the-rails experience where you were going through a story beat by beat by beat without that much exploration. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a completely different package for this JRPG franchise, and so we need to shift away from the action, everything is going to happen in a straight row, and move more over to what I call the slice of life anime syndrome. What I mean by this is that there is this overarching story of, yeah, Sephiroth, he's doing some evil stuff, we gotta stop him, all of that type of good, fun, convoluted Square Enix writing. But the main focus of this actual narrative is a lot more based around the characters. If you're like me and you love slice of life anime, you kind of know that not that much does happen. A lot of the episodes are just built around the characters, going through character moments and kind of growing the characters themselves, which makes you care about what they're doing and going and seeing them interact with others, seeing them in different types of situations. That is all what slice of life animes are about. And when you look at Final Fantasy VII, when you're going through all of the individual chapters, once again, yeah, there's that whole looming threat of Sephiroth doing something nefarious, but each region really focuses in on one of the individual characters and really expands their backstory, which makes you care that much more about them. For me, the most standout story of them all was the attention to detail that they did from Barrett, where already you love the guy, but giving him the more tragedy and explaining his entire backstory and motivations, it really makes you care about Barrett on a whole new level, and I do think that the game handled this extremely well. And what happens is, as you get these individual slices of all of these different character backstories that makes you care about them a lot more, then suddenly you just want to see them interacting with each other, or going through all of these crazy situations where you get to watch them interact with the world around them. And in that sense, this open world is almost fantastic for that, because there's so many different settings that exist where you get to see this core group of characters that you really enjoy go through different types of situations and scenarios and see how they just kind of have those character, more wholesome moments. Like, one of the parts that always stands out to me is when Tifa, Barrett, and Yuffie are on the minecart, and then you get the decision on whether or not you want to go for Barrett's more fun route or you want to go on the safer route so Yuffie doesn't throw up. And it's just giving you the decision, which ultimately doesn't change the giant narrative, but it really just kind of changes how the characters go through it. And you almost want to replay it just to be able to see what's going to change based on who you side with in this one individual circumstance. Final Fantasy VII takes a lot of this silliness and this goofiness and just throws it into the mix with all of this serious story, which ultimately is just supposed to make you enjoy spending time with the characters in all of the ridiculous fashion that you kind of see with these tropes in the Final Fantasy series. And while sure, you're gonna look at the game and then be like, well, it's all great that I'm reading and seeing all of these scenes kind of play out, but at the end of the day, this is a video game. I want to be able to play something that's fun and engaging, and as a gamer, you're kind of entitled to that. That's why you're playing video games in the first place. The Final Fantasy VII combat engine is one of the best in the series. I mean, in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was already extremely good, and it feels like they fine-tuned things even more into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Of course, there's all the synergy moves, but quite frankly, each of the individual characters has been just kind of freshened up a little bit, where they all have very different play styles, but it all works extremely well and is strangely intuitive. The one that I have the most fun playing is Yuffie, because it's so fun when you just use Brumal form, especially right when you see someone about to attack, and then you're just like, boom, and I'm gone. And on top of that too, you can spam magic from a distance, really exploiting some of the weaknesses of the enemies, which once again plays extremely different from Cloud, where you're just kind of going in there and doing the hack and slash type of thing, but then backing up and then using your magic. And you know, Cloud surprisingly uses a lot of magic and is actually have really strong magic attacks. Each of the individual characters has such a unique skill set in how they actually play in the party, but they all feel relatively balanced where you can just kind of cycle them in and out and you're not really changing things up too much. More impressive, it does feel like you can put the game down and then come back in like a week or so, and even if you haven't played it in a little while, it's intuitive enough that you can just kind of pick it up and then be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm starting to remember what's going on here, and then you're right back into the action. And so actually this is where we start to dip into some more of the criticism, because a lot of people felt that the game was bloated with a lot of this open world stuff. But okay, first touching onto the minigames, while yes, they aren't necessarily going to be like the most exquisite thing in the entire world, at the same time, they aren't terrible, all things considered. The one that stands out to me the most, and pretty much every single person who's played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is of course Queen's Blood. I mean, Queen's Blood is so well developed, and Final Fantasy has a weird track record of doing extremely good minigames, specifically card games, and Queen's Blood probably is the best out of all of them. But a lot of this open world stuff kind of tends to be a little bit more about the, oh, find the tower, oh, beat this person, and doing all of the Chadley stuff, which I think garnered the most level of criticism. And I think that there are quite a few valid points there, but ultimately what Chadley's missions were supposed to do was supposed to get you to explore these open world segments. And I really like how Square Enix built these open world segments, because essentially you have multiple open worlds that are a lot smaller and condensed, split up throughout all of the different maps. And you can tell that there's been a lot of care and attention to detail placed in all of these different environments. In a weird way, going through all of the different quests for Chadley and then seeing the final boss at the end of it made me appreciate the map design just a little bit more, because it was making sure that you were exploring every single nook and cranny, which to me enhanced my experience of the game. On top of that too, the Chadley stuff was actually very, very, very short, if you think about it, where it felt like I could just kind of hop in for like 30 minutes at the end of my day because I work a 9 to 5 and just be like, all right, I'm gonna just get a couple of these things done and then I can turn the game off and it's not that big of a deal. The side quests as well, while a little bit annoying at times, ultimately you're treated with more of these character interactions, which for me is once again front and center the most important thing about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I would like to mention some exceptions though, because I did have a couple of problems with things. The traversal is extremely cool in the open world. I like the concept that you have to be able to find a different chocobo and then you get a different movement tactic. And of course there is that dune buggy in that one area, but you know, that's a little bit different. One exception to this one is Gungaga. Personally, Gungaga was the worst one because those mushrooms were extremely hard to just traverse, and then it felt like they remedied that in Mount Nebo, where they're like, you know, now your chocobo can just shoot water out of its feet or whatever, and now you can just traverse the verticality a lot more easier. My next gripe is the Moogles. That Moogle minigame is probably the worst thing to exist in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It is so annoying and frustrating, and ultimately it doesn't kind of pay off for anything really worth it. But at the same time, if you're struggling that much with it, like me, because I was failing them left and right, and I'm like, oh man, I'm getting close to throwing my controller out the window. They actually offered me to lower the difficulty and increase the time and give you more lives and stuff like that. So they were like, listen, this isn't our best work. We tried to make it work. Not gonna work. That's fine. You can just get the completion and then move on with your life. And I was very appreciative of that. And so for me, that's some of the reasons why I absolutely loved Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think it's an extremely approachable game that surprisingly a lot of new people who are just somewhat interested in the franchise can kind of hop into, and the game will do a really good job of bringing you through its entire experience. Enjoying the mundane is a must in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I think that they do the mundane extremely well, which pays off in some of these haunting spectacles and set pieces that you're able to experience as the narrative does in fact progress. It's something beautiful. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth probably going to be nominated for Game of the Year as of recording this one. The real question is whether or not it will win out. And even in the RPG category, this year is a heavy hitter with Metaphor ReFantazio, and of course, Yakuza Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. I almost forgot the name of that game. That is crazy to me. But regardless, FF7 Rebirth is a fantastic game. And so if you're somebody who kind of bounced off of it, I'd say try to shift your frame of reference just a little bit. Look at the game under a different lens, and maybe you'll be able to hop back in and enjoy your time. And hey, you know, if you've got a friend who was interested in the Final Fantasy VII series, but never really kind of dipped into it, but they're not too sure if Remake or Rebirth, which one to go through, I still think Remake is the one to be able to go into it, because you kind of have to understand open world and JRPGs to really enjoy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But all things considered, FF7 Rebirth is definitely worth your money and definitely worth your time, because I really enjoyed it. That sounds like the worst endorsement ever, because I liked it, everybody does. Obviously, different people have different opinions, and so I want to hear your opinion down in the comments. Did you play through FF7 Rebirth? Better yet, did you bounce off of Rebirth? I want to hear why down below, because I think that there are a lot of valid criticisms surrounding the game. It's not all cherries and flowers and happiness, as I kind of started things out. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope you resonated with some of this, and of course, liking, subscribing, doing all of that stuff really helps boost this video so I can get a couple more views, because this is a neat, fun time that I'm having on this YouTube channel, and I would like to continue doing it. So thank you so much for spending your time with me, and we'll catch you in the next video. See you later, everybody.